you so much, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here. We're going to be continuing the conversation around the topic of wellness.
Enjoy.
And I'd like to invite my panelists to the stage. So we have Sara from Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group. We have Lindsay from Red Sea Global. We have Amanda from Four Seasons and Sammy from Gharieni Group. So if you could all make your way to the stage. Thank you. Gosh, we're all very spaced out. This is going to be... I was hoping for... Does everyone have a mic?
We can share. We can share.
There's one here as well. Yeah, yeah, okay. So I think, you know, at Quo, we are, as some of you may know, we're a branding agency, and we've been working with hospitality clients now for nearly 30 years. But what I've noticed recently is particularly in the last 2 to 3 years, the conversation around wellness with our clients in particular has really changed. People are no longer looking for a spa brand. They're looking for something a bit more. They're looking to shift their wellness proposition away from that traditional kind of spa therapy experience into something a lot more holistic, a lot more comprehensive, but they don't really know how to get there. And we're working with a number of different luxury brands around the world, trying to help them navigate their way into wellness, so to speak. So I'm delighted today that we've got 4 very different, very diverse panelists. We have Sammy, who comes from the supply and innovation side of the industry. We have Lindsay, who is a developer working at Red Sea. And then we have Sara and Amanda, who represent 2 major luxury brands, Mandarin Oriental and Four Seasons. And I hope each of you can offer very different perspectives on this conversation. And what we see in the wellness industry is that, you know, a recent report from McKinsey found that 80% of consumers now believe that wellness is either important or very important in their lives. And 50% say that it will become increasingly important in the coming years. 80% is a huge number. It's a huge percentage. I mean, we're talking 8 out of 10 people that walk through the door of any hotel today in the world are taking wellness seriously. And I think the big question this raises, what does that mean for hospitality? What does that mean for hotels? Is it time for wellness to come out from the shadow of hotels? And what does that look like? But wellness, as we've heard already, is a very complex word. It has many different definitions. It can be as small or as big as you want it to be. And it can encompass many different specialities, many different nuances, and involves very many different types of people and experiences within that. And each brand, each hotel, each operator, each developer has to figure out what that means for them. But I'm going to start with Sammy, because you're kind of a little bit set apart from this, because you are at the forefront. You're supplying the hotel industry, you're innovating, you're creating new products. Where do you see the industry? What trends are you experiencing? What kind of products and experiences are you offering to your clients? And what challenges are you facing in terms of getting them to engage with those products? How do you ensure that some new technology doesn't just become another machine in another room that gets forgotten about? Sammy.
Hello. So that's 10 questions in one. First of all, as everyone knows, there are different types of definition of wellness. So whether I go there and then in an existing property that there are spa services back at the day, and suddenly they want to implement some wellness technologies or wellness experiences. It can be something like yoga, etc., but it can be also technology. And how you call it wellness depends on what you are offering. I think one of the most important things that you have to stick to your message. It's very important, whether you are 10% wellness deliverer or you are 80% or you are 100%, like going to medical wellness. So when it comes to I started my business 33 years ago. Back at the day, wellness didn't exist. And so the first trend was spa, and then suddenly we are hearing wellness. So as an innovative company, we brought some technology 15 years ago, and people were kind of not ready for the wellness trend. And the wellness trend starts a little before COVID, and we see an acceleration and need for technologies. So some focus on totally wellness, and then they need all of that programming, and some just want to have the nice adding to these properties. We have established properties like Four Seasons, Mandarin, Oriental, etc. I mean, when they have an existing property, then you can only add things. But when you start designing a new product like you are working on, then it's easier because then it's combining all things in terms of making it really more innovative.
Yeah. Thank you, Sammy. And Lindsay, I think, you know, at Red Sea, you've obviously got this incredible wellness destination that you're developing. Tell me how you're approaching that differently. How are you kind of trying to move away from traditional models in terms of the development of spaces, of experiences, of the brands that you're partnering with? You know, talk me through those experiences and those decisions that you're making.
So for those of you who don't know Red Sea Global, we're a developer in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia. Our foundation is sustainable, responsible development and sustainable regenerative tourism. In the big world of Red Sea Global, we have 2 destinations. One of them is Red Sea, which is made up of 20 individual master plans. And then we have Amala, which is within the kingdom. It's pegged as the health and wellness destination, not only in the kingdom, in the GCC, but also in the world, we hope. We're that ambitious. And it's important to understand where Amala was born, because this also comes to the methodology of what we applied as we're building the destination. And in 2018, Vision 2030 for Saudi Arabia was launched, and that identified 7 of the key gigaprojects across the kingdom that was put in place in order to diversify the economy and to bring new opportunity. In parallel with that, Saudi launched the Quality of Life Program, which was funded by the Human Development Fund, which would bring new opportunities to Saudi nationals, but also to different areas within the economy. So this is where Amala was born, and Amala is dedicated as the health and wellness destination. So as we build that destination, it's set up phase 1 and phase 2. It's due to open later in 2025. It's 12 different assets. So I tend to look at this in 2 different perspectives. We have the hard assets, which would be where we choose our dedicated wellness operators or our luxury hospitality operators. And then we have the physical asset itself, which is nature. We have these incredible coastlines. We also have beautiful mountains for hiking. So the destination itself welcomes a lot of sport, outdoor activity, connection to nature. We have a limited footprint, and what's really important to note too about our approach within Red Sea Global is we have almost 150 environmentalists and sustainability experts that are sitting at the forefront of every project. So that means that we develop responsibly, we build responsibly. All of our buildings are LEED Platinum, and we've been able to achieve that. And so you've got this incredible destination, this footprint. You've got nature at its best. You've got this attraction of different dedicated wellness operators. And I think what's really important there is that, you know, if you take Palm Jumeirah as an example, it is an experience, it's a destination itself, but it has multiple owners. Whereas Red Sea Global, we oversee the entire destination. So we know exactly what each one of our partners is bringing in. So we've brought in Clinical Prairie, dedicated to medical wellness, very, very much dedicated to science and technology. We have Equinox, which is a brand that opened up in America. It's all lifestyle, high-performance living, high-performance wellness, high-performance sport. And so what we've been able to do across that destination is identify different methodologies, different philosophies, and different expertise to make sure that we truly offer something really unique and differentiated, and that we don't just have more of the same. So when you combine all of our incredible operators and the expertise that they bring to the table, and then you layer in our sustainability and our approach to regenerative tourism, and then on top of that you bring in the destination and all the activities, we've really been able to, I really feel that we can fly that flag of being one of the most incredible wellness destinations in the world.
Thank you, Lindsay. I mean, I think, and as Sammy pointed out, you have that privilege of being able to start from scratch, right? Being able to imagine, to curate this incredible wellness destination with this, you know, the selection of brands and offer that entire spectrum of wellness, which I think is an incredible opportunity. But I want to turn to Sara and Amanda, because I think actually you have the biggest challenge here. You both work for existing traditional luxury hospitality brands, and change is hard when you have existing assets, when you have existing brands, and you're trying to embrace the very rapidly changing space of wellness. Maybe Sara, let me start with you. How are you managing that as an operator, as a brand?
Thank you so much. I think probably one of the things that we need to look at, and what we do very well as Mandarin Oriental, is we look at authenticity of our brand and what we do very well. And that's something that we actually build on and develop for every new property coming ahead. I think it's a super exciting time for the industry right now with the amount of technology and AI and so on and so forth coming up. So what we do have, they're very fortunate, and we have so many new hotels coming up, so we can really play with new technologies and really experiment for every new property just to see what works, and then really just build on that for other properties going forward.
Yeah, thank you. And Amanda, what about you at Four Seasons? How are you kind of integrating the new trends in wellness, but also being cognizant that there are some guests who just want a massage in a traditional spa setting? So how do you balance those different needs?
Yes, I think Four Seasons as a brand, I mean, we are a hospitality brand, right? And we know what we're good at, and providing that luxury experience. I think from a spa operations perspective, we're bringing more experiences outside of the spa, and looking at it from a 360-degree approach, and how we can bring it into hotel rooms, how we can bring it into the F&B venues, and looking at how we can incorporate wellness at different touch points in guest stay. Because like you said, we don't have the opportunity to renovate every property and every existing asset that we have, but we look at our suppliers and we look at what we can do to try to continually update with some of the technologies that are coming to the forefront, and seeing what would have, appeal and, staying power at that point.
Thank you, Amanda. And I think just circling back to Sammy, and something that you kind of so correctly pointed out, is that no matter whether you are going at wellness at 20% or 80%, you've got to have a point of view, right? You've got to have a perspective. And I think that comes back to the brand as well. What is your positioning on wellness? Can you talk a bit more about that? Why do you need to have that positioning? Why is it important for brands, whatever their sort of take on wellness is, that they communicate that clearly and they live up to that story in terms of how they execute and bring those experiences to life?
I think first of all, it's a fact that everyone has to deliver wellness nowadays, whether it's a small thing or a big thing. This is a must-have. I think it's the biggest challenge. What I see is when you are hotel, like Mandarin Oriental, etc., where the average stay is 3 days, you cannot do magic. In 3 days, you can go to the gym. I very often compare it to the gym activity, the brain activity or whatever. In 3 days, you can go to the gym. You can keep the level of your well-being and at a certain level, but then you cannot create magic. In order to make really big results, you need this specific wellness resorts where you spend, that, as a matter of fact, at least 7 days. Even 7 days will not be magical. It's a little more like Lanzerhof, Clinique La Prairie, etc., where it's not about more physical activity, technologies to help detoxing, to help distressing. So the balance is always a critical point. And for me, the hospitality, they will always bring this nice components to that journey of 3 days. So I was 3 days in Maldives for my birthday last 2 days ago. And in 3 days, how much time can I spend in Tuas Joali Being? I don't know if you are familiar with that. It's the first wellness resort in paradise. So is this a concept that works? I don't know. For me, no, because I want to enjoy my birthday and then celebrate. So it's important, your product, where it is, how you do it. You have to listen to your market. You invite people in a paradise. Can you really go with a concept like Clinique La Prairie? I doubt. Maybe I'm wrong, Simone. So it's this complexity of the whole story.
Absolutely. And Amanda, at Four Seasons, do you feel as a brand that there is clarity within the organization and to your consumers about what your perspective is on wellness?
Yes, and I think that currently, I think that there is the transparency to our consumer, but I think as we evolve, we're looking at, collaborations, looking at experts coming in and partnering with those. I mean, we just released our partnership with Chi Longevity for our property in Singapore. And so as we look to have those kind of relationships to the medical component or the providers that can do that really well, I think you'll start to kind of shift what the
Yeah.
consumer can expect from us.
And
specifically.
really interesting that you have that partnership with G. And Amanda, Sara, with Mandarin Oriental, I know that you also at certain properties have been engaging in partnerships and collaborations. How important has that been for your brand as you kind of move into this, move more into this space? So to
Yeah, I
speak?
mean, it's really important for us. I mean, we have a great partnership with Clinique La Prairie in our London property, which has worked very, very, very well, and we're looking at other future collaborations as well. But I think really looking at what Amanda said as well, I mean, we as Mandarin Oriental, we are not the experts in longevity or diagnostics. So we focus on what we do really well, and we look at, really great partnerships and collaborations that can help us develop and really take our experiences for our guests a lot further. So I think the collaborations and partnerships are really important.
I think, Lindsay, this is something that you're passionate about as well. What does partnerships and collaborations mean to you at Red Sea?
Well, I think, outside of Red Sea, even I really believe in the power of ambassadorship or collaboration or partnership, and taking brands that have shared values but different set of expertise, a different target market, can only enhance and elevate your brands. And I think within the industry, you guys have just showcased some really great examples of that. Some other examples would be Six Senses. I think, when I look at them as a brand in terms of collaborations and partnerships and the way that wellness shows up in their brand authentically, they're really great at it, and we're happy to be welcoming them and their approach at Amala. They have recently done partnerships with Sanctum, which is a mindfulness digital experience, a very immersive digital experience. They do retreats. They've just done a partnership with Citius Retreats, which is completely out of their league in terms of sports and professional athletics. And they also, in specific properties that Six Senses has, like Ibiza, the Douro Valley, we hope that they'll be able to bring that type of approach to Amala. If I look beyond some of the brands that are at Amala, you look at Aman. They've just recently done a partnership with Maria Sharapova, as a tennis. And so they're doing these really incredible tennis retreats. Again, it's for those elitist athletes. It's for a very specific niche clientele. And they're bringing that specific flavor to it. So I think, when you do an interesting collaboration, it doesn't matter if it's a supplement brand, if it's a hospitality brand, if it's a fashion brand, if it's whatever it happens to be, if you can build more credibility by doing a partnership or ambassadorship with that brand and target, get into a different target market, I think that's, as long as you've got shared values as a brand experience, that can really only enhance what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. But what are some of the, kind of on the flip side, what are some of the pitfalls or obstacles that are maybe making it harder or making it challenging to bring these different, hospitality and maybe these more disruptive wellness brands together?
Well, look, there's always a cost associated with this. You probably will have noticed, and Catherine brought it up in her Instagram, the launch of the Estate, which is a bit of a disruptor to the industry. It's by SBE Lifestyle Brands. They've run on it's not a partnership, it's more, there's an involvement with Mark Anthony, as well as Tony Robbins. And so that has something that there's an investment there from those collaborations, but it's going to be, quite expensive. It's also going to add value in terms of the events that they're able to provide, the retreats, the content, the social. There's layers and layers of that. So I think that there's this, there's this understanding of how can we be very ambitious and create credibility and drive very specific footfall to an asset or a destination, mixed with the profitability that's going to come. So it needs to be done very smart. And typically these ambassadorships, they cost a lot of money. Another great example would be Raksa Wellbeing in Thailand. That was something that was launched after COVID and maybe was a little bit slower to gain momentum in the industry. And I'm not sure many of you in this room would have remembered they just launched a retreat with Deepak Chopra, which was a very clever idea. They needed to bring visibility. They needed to drive heads and beds. They needed to drive programs, and that was a really creative and strategic way to bring more value to what they were trying to achieve at the resort. So there's value in it.
Thank you. And Amanda and Sara, feel free, either of you, to answer this question, but what about membership models? Is that an opportunity going forwards in terms of wellness? I know at some of your properties, I think Mandarin Oriental, I was talking to Jamira, they have the J Club. there is a sort of movement towards membership. How successful is that in terms of building a community? Because I think if you look at some of the disruptors, whether it's Remedy Place or The Well, a lot of it is about lifestyle. It's not simply about wellness offerings. It's actually building a community of supporters and proponents of this experience. How do you feel you have a role to play in that field?
Go ahead. We have a very successful, there's a few properties of ours that have very successful memberships. In particular, Mandarin Oriental, Jumeirah, Dubai, which has now been open 5 years. What we wanted to do with that was almost break the stereotype of a hotel fitness center, and we really wanted to bring the local community in. So down the line, we've got over 100 memberships. We do want to keep it quite small and personal, and I think that's the goal for hotels, or for our hotel brand in particular, and really build those social connections. So looking at things like, social ice baths, spinning, and wellness mornings and things like that. So that's what has worked very well for us. For example, in London, we have a Zen running club which takes part in Hyde Park every month, and that's gone really, really, really popular. So we're looking to roll things like that out throughout the hotel group.
Fantastic. And Amanda, at Four Seasons, do you have similar initiatives?
Yes, we do really well with our membership program in Jumeirah as well, and I think we'll continue to see that popularity for that social wellness and that community, and as well as our trend for building our properties with more residents. So the residents are your natural membership component to a lot of our properties, and really driving them into what we're doing in the spa operations.
Fantastic. Sammy, I want to come back to you, and I'll at least start with you. We've seen so much change in the wellness industry, so much development over the last 3 to 5 years, but what's going to come next? If you project forward 5 years, what are we going to be talking about here at FHS in 5 years' time? What are those big trends that may be dictating the wellness then? What innovations are we likely to see, and how much disruption are we likely to experience?
I think, first of all, back to nature. It is something that is definitely never will disappear. And back to the future, because AI and robotics and all these new ChatGPTs, etc., will be also part of the wellness. Or some of the technology we use already AI, and it gives the product totally different possibilities that you cannot get with this. So more technology, but definitely also more nature. This is what I think.
Lindsay?
I think there's going to be a strengthening based on digital drain. I think that there's going to be a need to strengthen the intellect. And I was inspired recently at a retreat at Ananda, where, as part of the Ayurvedic philosophy and the Vedic philosophy, we talk about intellectual well-being, and it's, they made a very valid point that, actually we should be making 70% of our decisions on a day-to-day basis with our intellect. Whereas because we're in front of our computers all the time and algorithms are kind of dictating what we see, we're losing the ability to think with ChatGPT,
so
etc. And so it was a really eye-opening experience to make sure that I'm continuing kind of tapping into that cognitive brain and strengthening the intellect, and making sure that we continue to read and really keep our brains thinking and understanding how our brains age, which, Clinical Prairie has got their brain potential programs as well. So I think that for me, intellectual well-being is going to be something that we need to strengthen.
Fantastic. Sara?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm really excited to see what happens within the next 5 years, and I think, even over the last 2 years, post-COVID, I think it's always been the humanity, and I really want to make sure that in the next 5 years we still don't lose that human touch with, like with ChatGPT and everything else that comes on board. I think from one of the things that we noticed literally after COVID was that human connection that people were craving for, and I think we really need to make sure that doesn't stop.
Yeah, I was a little bit scared when I saw the robotic massage table over in the booth over there, and the first thing I said is, what about the human element? Like, do I want to be massaged by a robot?
Apparently it's amazing, but I think it's also that exchange of energy between people, right? And just that understanding that if I'm a massage therapist for many years myself, so having that understanding about people what they're going through in their own personal lives is people really just open up to therapists and to spa people, and I think that's something that we should never lose.
Absolutely. Amanda?
I agree with all my colleagues up here, but I think it's interesting that as we evolve our technology, that I think we will see that we're going back to nature and back to human touch, and how do we evolve that. And I can't help but think about all of the trend now with the wearables and the diagnostic testing, that in 5-10 years from now, everybody will have that data already. And so I think we will have to look at how are we evolving our treatments and our menus, considering that they have that data at hand already. So I think we'll see just a shift in even some of the basic services that we do, but how do we evolve that?
I think data is a really important point here, because I think today diagnostic is a big part of how you start the wellness journey with our guests, right? But going into the future, I can imagine a lot of that data will be already, the guests will already have that in their hands from their wearables or whatever else they have access to. So they'll be coming to your hotels, to your spas, to your wellness facilities, knowing a lot more than they know today about themselves. How is that going to shift the way that your offerings, your services, your experiences, the journey you take your guests on? I mean, Sammy, what's your perspective on that?
What do you mean, diagnostic? Yeah, I mean,
in
diagnostic
terms of
is really also a very important tool that we are working on our MetaWell concept, but it will not be a medical diagnostic, it will well-being diagnostic. With measuring some data from the iris, from the eye, you can get a well-being index, etc. This is, I think, what our industry is looking at, not the medical part of the business, which should be kept to the specialist and don't mix up everything. So diagnostic is a tool, and people will know, they want to know more about what's happening, and whether it's a wearable or it's a service that you deliver. Because you have to show people what happens before and after. We all feel better, but when we know it's 90% improvement, wow. If we know it's just 10%, no. It's interesting between what you yourself feel and what you need.
And I think, as a closing comment, I think that's perfect, because I think proof in the results really speak for themselves. And I think people increasingly want that result. They want to see that what they've invested in has made a difference to their lives. And I think data is going to be key to that going forwards. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time, but I want to take this opportunity to thank my panel very much for a really interesting conversation. Thank you, Sammy, Lindsay, Sara, and Amanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.